Welcome to the Apple Insider Podcast. This is your host, Stephen Robles, and this week we have leaks covering pretty much the full range of Apple devices, plus more updates on 1Password 8 and Electron. Got some personal anecdotes about AirTag and a crazy tweet thread about YouTube creators and the raw footage. So we're going to try and get to it all. And this episode is brought to you by Headspace, LinkedIn Jobs, and Masterclass. You'll hear about those in a moment. And joining me for 2 weeks in a row, my friend Wes Hilliard. How's it going, Wes?
Pretty good, Stephen. Seems my master plan has worked in getting William to get locked in the basement, so he won't be joining us this week.
No, William fell down a well. No, that's not true either. I personally had some scheduling differences this week, and so William couldn't make it, but fret not, UK listeners. He will be back next week. I started looking at Apple Podcasts, like technology charts, and we are actually higher up on the charts in the UK than the US. So I don't know if the entire country of the UK and England are listening to us, but thank you. You guys are awesome.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is cool. I assume it's all William. They're all just here for William. So keep listening. He'll be back next week. All right. Well, a bunch of leaks, rumors, and all that came out. So we'll try to hit that first. iPhone 13, Wedbush Supply, which is one of the organizations in the supply chain. They gave a prospective date for the iPhone 13 launch, or 12S, whatever it's called, in the coming months. They said third week of September. It looks like an iPhone launch or event date. So that's interesting. And also another leak about the kind of camera we might see in this future iPhone being a periscope style camera. And if you think of a periscope like on a submarine, it's not exactly that. It's more of using the width of the phone, not the thickness, but the width, and having different mirrors and lenses inside the body that reflect off each other to create more of an optical zoom effect rather than having to depend on the depth of the phone and putting larger lenses in that way. It's using mirrors and reflection and all that kind of stuff. So cool leaks, cool rumors. Again, we're going to be seeing in just a few weeks, but do you have any thoughts on that, Wes?
It's interesting. I mean, Wedbush, all you have to do is close your eyes and throw a dart at a dartboard with the calendar for September and think, okay,
yeah,
the 7th is possible, but it's not going to happen.
That'd be early.
Yeah, late in the month, middle of the month kind of thing. I'm voting for 13th just because that gives Apple the usual week-long release window, and then the following Friday they could do pre-orders, and then the week after that do the release. So that fits within expectations. That gets the iPhone 13 out of the door in September.
Right.
Because if Apple does launch in October, all the things are going to say iPhone 13 is late and blah, 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 Apple failure, the usual.
The usual.
As far as the periscope thing, that's interesting. I mean, it's been around for a while.
Yeah.
One of the Samsungs did that a few years ago. I think it's in their current one that does the 100 times optical zoom nonsense. That's barely real. And come on.
I know.
Yeah.
You see pictures of it and it looks good. I mean, it's basically just a better zoomed in view. Now, Google is doing this on the Pixels with using your natural handshake and taking a bunch of photos and putting it together with computational photography. So it's like, which company or which method is going to really be the long-term solution? Is it going to be doing funny things with the hardware inside the phone, or is it going to be more having computer-generated photos, basically kind of creating these either zoomed-in images or better stabilized images through software?
Yeah, I vote for real optics. Let's not do digital crop. Digital crop is nonsense. You might as well just take the photo as is and then crop it later. I don't care what algorithm you're using. It's going to be relatively the same result. And I've seen the pictures Samsung's takes. They're interesting, but you go on their website and they show the example of someone standing on a balcony at a beach and zooming into the beach. And it's the kid's holding a sign 30 yards away that says, I love you or something. And yeah, you can make that out, but it's still a garbage photo that I would never put on a wall. The question is can the periscope thing fit into the phone without sacrificing battery life or thickness?
Right.
It's definitely a lot of questions there. I think Apple's just going to stick with simple what it can fit in the current camera configuration,
Yeah, for sure. And that's also a cringe factor whenever I see someone not only hit the 2x button on their iPhone, but then try to pinch to zoom in before they take the picture. And that's what Wes is talking about, that digital crop. You're not zooming in anything physically. It's literally just blowing the picture up. And so you get less pixels in that image. So don't do that. You can hit the 2x button to switch to that longer lens, but then just take whatever photo it is and crop it later.
The maximum Apple could probably do in that size of its current lens is maybe 5x. Maybe they figure out something fancy.
Right.
5x would be very welcome compared to the 2x now. Honestly, it might require a completely different lens, so we might see a 4-lens iPhone, but I don't think that's happening this year. This year is going to be focused on the megapixels, light, capture, stuff like that.
Yeah, and I think that pro video feature stuff that we talked about. I think it was last week, either ProRes as a format to be used on the new iPhone, and then that portrait style video mode. Those sound like features that I could hear them talking about in an announcement that people would understand and, be excited about. So we'll see. We're probably less than a month away from seeing the next iPhone. So stay tuned for sure.
Are you going to order one immediately, Stephen?
I mean, of all the Apple devices I jump on launch day, it's the iPhone. Like I'm going to upgrade, and I've been using my big cameras more lately. Like I have a Sony A6400 and a Panasonic S5, pictures and video and stuff. But I don't know, something about I always want the new phone. Let's be real. So yes, I'll be getting it on launch day.
What if Apple announces the iPhone 13 on September 13th?
Ooh.
Do you think we should stand underneath the ladder and break a mirror at the same time too?
Is it a full moon that day? That'll be the question.
Right.
Or is it a Friday? It's not a Friday.
No,
it wouldn't
it's
be a Friday.
Tuesday. Yeah.
Tuesday, yeah, that's right. It's September 13th is a Monday.
Oh, I'm crazy then.
So it would be, it'd either be the 7th, 14th, or 21st.
Well,
so,
darn
no, we dodged the bullet. Yeah, they could make a joke. I mean, if they do the event on the 14th, they can make some joke about, we're a day late. I don't know. We'll see.
Sure.
We're a month away. We'll know soon. Apple Watch Series 7 outlet 91 mobiles, which has a pretty short track record with Apple leaks, although they did provide accurate details about the redesigned iPad Air. They have quote-unquote renders of the next Series 7 Apple Watch, and it is very reminiscent, basically looks exactly like what John Prosser leaked 3 months ago, a squarish design of the new Apple Watch, more of a boxy look. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Straight edges, kind of like the iPhone 12 and the new iPad Air and iPad Pro. So looks like this redesign is coming. Again, unknown what actual features will be coming in this next series of Apple Watch. Too early for a lot of the health features, and there's been some rigmarole about even like the internal health team structure and people leaving and Apple not being able to get some of these health features as fast as they would like to the Apple Watch and their devices. So I'm very curious, most of all, if this design comes, great, but what actually is going to be different inside the watch that would make people want to upgrade?
On the design, we all saw you, John Prosser, yelling about how, you had this 3 months ago. Obviously, this person probably just copied and pasted that design. That's, it
looks very similar.
Close. Yeah. I mean, I don't know how I feel about it personally, flat versus rounded. I guess I just need to see what Apple's version looks like and see how they've changed it.
Right.
I don't have too much invested in what the watch looks like at this point, and not much of a fashion icon. So as long as it works like an Apple Watch, it's fine. Now, I will point out, though, that the last redesign or design change for the Apple Watch was the Series 4 with the bigger screens, and that was it.
Right.
All we got was a bigger display. So a radical redesign would be welcome at this point, even if, yes, curse me, I know, if the bands change in this form factor. Now, knowing Apple, they might try to wail around that and say, oh, the old bands are compatible, but there's this new type of band, or maybe there's an adapter. But at the end of the day, at some point, we might just have to let go and move on to it. And 7-8 iterations of the Apple Watch, I think it's safe to say, like, all right, we can move on. Now, yes, that being said, you could have bought a $550 Apple Watch titanium band this year and, finally, and then found out, oh, well, this doesn't work on the next one. So,
yeah, and that's just one area. I'm going to say, unlike the 30-pin to Lightning, I think this Apple Watch connector is going to be here long term. I don't imagine any redesign would save a bunch of space. It's pretty shallow as it is. And how much they advertise new bands when they come out, they've been doing like a seasonal thing where they have like spring bands and then summer bands and some even in the fall, and not just like sport loops, but they have the woven ones and the different nylons. So
from a design perspective, I personally can't see any reason to change the band unless it just physically can't fit in a new designed Apple Watch.
Right.
The only reason I could see Apple actually changing it and just and biting that bullet is if a data element was introduced to the watch bands, which has been rumored for 5 iterations of the Apple Watch. But if at some point bands could become smart or have some kind of physical connection to the Apple Watch, that band connection might not be enough and might have to change at that point. Which, if I'm getting functionality out of it, good. If it's designed for the sake of design, then yes, I'm going to be angry with the rest of you. But at the end of the day, I wouldn't think that this band connection will last forever.
Sure. Now, I will say, with the materials of the next Series 7 Apple Watch, there's been some rumors that the edition models, which have been in the past ceramic titanium and with the original, the gold, but that they may do away with some of the addition materials and just offer aluminum and stainless steel. I'm going to say, as a current titanium Series 6 wearer, I hope they don't get away with those materials. I hope they at least choose one or the other. If they want to do a TikTok cycle, watch pun intended, of like ceramic 1 year and titanium another, I'd be down with that. But I do like the titanium finish, because if they don't have those, then the only sapphire glass high-end Apple Watch you could get is a shiny stainless steel. And I guess they also do the space gray stainless steel, but I actually like the matte finish of the titanium of the current version. And I missed the ceramic cycle. I did not get a Series 5. I just didn't upgrade that year, and so I'd never got a ceramic one, but I kind of want another chance to try it.
I wonder if, Apple has the numbers on this, so I wonder if this is just the case of no one's buying the ceramic, no one's buying the titanium, they're just too expensive. It would be hard to believe Apple would discontinue titanium only to release a titanium-rimmed iPhone the same year. Like that would feel like a punch in the nose to people who were like, oh cool, I could have the same material on my watch and my phone this year.
Right.
It could just be resources, it could be availability of materials, but I personally don't see it changing anytime soon, because again, these higher end things are more expensive, they're selling less of them, so unless it's just a cost factor, it's probably not going away.
So in addition to the physical Apple Watch, there's been sub-hubbub about the actual health team. And so let's hit that real quick now. You had the article, Wes. Why don't you tell us what was going on?
So basically, if you guys have been keeping track of Apple Health, they've had some internal things going on over the last couple of years. And about 2018, it was rumored that Apple acquired a bunch of health clinics internal to Apple to help develop technologies surrounding health, not just for the Apple Watch. And they've apparently been dogfooding this app called Health Habit, where the employees have been logging like activity information, health information, and it's also been helping with like some kind of hypertension stuff inside of the app. So that's all been over the last couple of years, but apparently since the app has been introduced, it was originally touted as something that was going to like change the health industry. It was going to give employers a great way to manage their employees and stuff like that. It was going to be this big thing, all internal, of course. We're only hearing this through third-party sources and rumors, but apparently it never really caught on internally. Half of the people who downloaded the app never actually used it, and the other half were lackluster in logging their information. It just kind of fell off a cliff, and Apple had over 50 engineers dedicated to this app. So yeah, since apparently around June, just a few months ago, people have been getting pulled away from this team. They've been the people on the team have been told, find other places to work within Apple, or you're probably just going to get the boot. So yeah, it's just not looking good over there. There was an article the other day about the health team just losing employees left and right now. Connecting the two dots, it seems like this could be related to that. Just people seeing like, okay, well, the Apple executive team is saying, refocusing on Apple Watch, this is what we're going to be doing from now on. Let's get away from this app. And a lot of these guys they hired from those clinics are saying, yeah, no, that's not what I'm here for. See you later.
Well, yeah, I'd be curious. Apple has really been pushing the health features of the watch recently, even with like watchOS 8, sharing health features with family. So curious what the future is that. Curious the future of it for sure, but they're still going to be pushing it.
It's just an interesting story from internal Apple observations. So if you've been keeping track of this stuff with the employee at Apple named Cher, you'll know what I'm talking about. There's all this internal problems with complaints about interpersonal behavior at the company, and it's a whole thing. We've written about it on AppleInsider. Not going to get into it right now, but another side of it just seems like disagreements within Apple. There was a Wall Street Journal article in June surrounding the health team about this Health Habit app and misrepresentation of results of research and stuff like that, and that's why certain people were leaving even then.
Gotcha.
Because Jeff Williams was touting like at a meeting like, oh, we did this internal pilot with 500 patients, and 91% showed that they lowered their blood pressure and it helped with hypertension. And it was just like these numbers were not only unrealistic, it's just untouched by any other method for dealing with hypertension and high blood pressure in the industry. A lot of people were feeling like they were getting a little misrepresented, and the health people at Apple were feeling that way. So again, it's just it seems like a lot of internal communication issues going on surrounding these things, and might be why we're seeing Apple just pull back from health a lot more internally.
Gotcha. I think it all comes back to when they introduced Slack in the company. That was the real issue.
Oh yeah.
Slack, and the fact that it's built on Electron, which we'll get to in a minute. But This episode is brought to you by Headspace. Guys, I love Headspace. I've been using it for actually over a year now. And if you've tried meditation or mindfulness before, maybe it didn't work for you. Maybe you felt like you were doing it wrong. But if you have mental health as part of your self-care plan this year, you owe it to yourself to try Headspace. I know you might be thinking, I just don't have the time. Well, Headspace has just a few minute activities and they'll walk you through it daily. And I guarantee you will notice such a difference in your ability to focus, lowering your stress, or maybe you just feel completely overwhelmed. Well, Headspace has a 3-minute SOS meditation just for you. Headspace is one of the only meditation apps advancing the field of mindfulness and meditation through clinically validated research. Do you need some help falling asleep? Headspace has wind down sessions their members swear by. And for parents, Headspace even has morning meditations you can do with your kids. Headspace's approach to mindfulness can reduce stress, improve sleep, boost focus, and increase your overall sense of well-being. Again, I've been using Headspace for a while now, and it really does help me focus and feel more at ease during the day. I've also done some of the kids sessions with my own kids. I have 3 kids, and when it comes to focus or attention or just being a little more at peace, I love those sessions. And again, being a musician, they actually have incredible focus music, specially curated by the Headspace Chief Music Officer, John Legend. Headspace is backed by 25 published studies on its benefits, 600,000 5-star reviews, and over 60 million downloads. Headspace makes it easy for you to build a life-changing meditation practice with mindfulness that works for you, on your schedule, anytime, anywhere. You deserve to feel happier, and Headspace is meditation made simple. Go to headspace.com/AppleInsider. That's headspace.com/AppleInsider for a free 1-month trial. Try it totally for free with access to Headspace's full library of meditations for every situation. This is the best deal offered right now, so head to headspace.com/AppleInsider today. That link will be in the podcast notes and you can just click it there. Our thanks to Headspace for sponsoring this episode. All right, one more leak. The iPad mini, Mark Gurman from Bloomberg says that by the end of the year, we will see this redesigned iPad mini and a different chassis or redesigned regular iPad. There's not a better really name for it, but we've seen obviously the leaks about the iPad mini. There's this new purported case mold that we have pictures and video of. It's like this metal mold.
It's a piece of sheet metal that someone cut.
It's a piece of sheet metal someone cut, and a little suspect. But we've seen lots of leaks and rumors about the redesigned iPad mini. I'm very excited for this device. I keep thinking about Kindle and e-readers versus the iPad mini. I was so close to just getting a Kindle the other day, and then I saw that it has a micro USB port still, and I just was totally turned off by it.
No one can deal with that in 2021. That's insane.
No, did not want to deal with that. So very excited. By the end of the year, again, Mark Gurman is kind of confirming this. We should see an updated base model iPad and this redesigned iPad mini. So excited to see that before the end of the year.
It seems like everyone except for Mako Katara is agreeing that this is a redesign, because they were the ones that came out with a report that said, no, this is just going to be another iPad mini.
I don't think so.
Yeah. I feel like there's too many rumors. So you saw this mold, right? The power button and volume buttons are all on the same side, like some kind of crazy person. There's no way that that's the case.
That's true.
The buttons on the top and the volume buttons, there's 3 buttons on the same side on the small side of the iPad, and they said it's because they needed to make room for the Apple Pencil holder, which is nonsense because it can go on the other side from the volume buttons. So it's just a very strange, again, leak for me. It doesn't make sense. But
all right, well, let's actually get to some things that happened. SharePlay, which was one of the big features that Apple touted that's coming to iOS 15. SharePlay is the feature where if you want to watch something, whether it's a show, a movie, or listen to music or a podcast with someone over FaceTime, so you can actually see and talk to the person, but you can also be watching or listening to the same piece of content simultaneously. It's actually been removed from the current betas, and Apple announced that it will not come with the launch of iOS 15, whenever that officially is launched, probably in September. And we'll have to wait a little longer for SharePlay to come to iOS 15. They did say later in the fall. It's not like it's been pushed to 2022, but probably November time, maybe even December. Sometimes we'll see some of those features in a 0.1, 0.2 update. So SharePlay won't be available at the launch of iOS and iPadOS 15, but will come later in the fall.
Yeah, did you use SharePlay on the betas at all?
I did not. It wasn't available in the very first beta. Andrew and I tried it, and then we didn't try it again since those betas, so no. Have not tried it. Have you?
No, not at all. I mean, I need friends for that. No, I'm just joking. But no, it's an interesting thing for sure. Me and my friends have discussed. I can't wait for third parties to get a hold of it, because I can imagine having a watch party with friends that live, miles away in Virginia to catch up on some anime or something. Like, this is definitely going to be a feature I'm going to take advantage of at some point. Just, I can't really do much in the betas except for like Apple TV Plus, like a Ted Lasso watching party or something. And now it seems that this isn't coming at all, and everyone's just like, oh no, but it's kind of a complex feature.
It'll come in the fall. It'll come later.
It's kind of a complex feature.
Yeah, of all the features, it's, you got to deal with cloud stuff, both, two devices, maybe even like iPhone and iPad, or even iPhone and Mac. So for sure, complicated.
Yeah, this and Universal Control are the big complicated features for sure.
And then also in the latest betas of iOS 15, the great controversy over the Safari redesign, especially on the iPhone, has now changed once again on the iPhone. Apple is giving users the option in the settings menu to either continue with that tab bar view or use what they're calling, quote, single tab view, which puts it at the top, kind of like it always has. Not only that, but they added additional toggles for things like website tinting, which in the iOS 15 betas, as you visit different websites, the entire tint and color of the Safari web browser would change as you go from site to site to match the site itself. If you have AppleInsider open in the tab and you go to that tab in Safari on iPad OS 15 beta, like the whole Safari turns dark, kind of turns black. Then you can go to another website and it'll change colors again. So you now have the option to turn that tinting off. And on the iPhone, they're bringing kind of some of the previous design elements back and giving users the choice. So everybody was kind of celebrating this on Twitter. Again, it's been changing almost every beta that's come out over the summer. So unknown what will be the actual launch Safari when iOS 15 launches, but good to know that they are seemingly listening to the community on the different woes of the iOS 15 Safari.
Yeah, the ATP guys pointed out that's an accidental tech podcast for you non-nerds out there. But they pointed out that basically it could be from feedback, or we're 3 months behind Apple on all of these betas, because a lot of this stuff is, it's going through their internal channels. It's being updated. They have their own pre-alphas they're testing and stuff. So sure, while they might be listening outside for feedback, and they are taking a lot of feedback in from reports and stuff, but I wonder how far behind we are on Apple. Like, what's the lead here from complaints on the internet to actually implementing a change to the features? Because honestly, this might be a response to something from mid-July coming out in this beta, and then like 2 months from now we'll see actual responses to the latest complaints. It just seems to be how it works anyway.
True.
But in any case, how do you feel about all these changes? Like, are you using iOS on a 15 on an iPhone right now?
I've not done it on an iPhone yet. And so I don't want to comment on that. I would just be echoing what everyone else has thoughts. Going back to the Accidental Tech podcast guys like Marco Arment and Casey List, they have lots of thoughts on the iPhone version. I've been using the beta on the iPad, for the past several weeks pretty hard. And I tried keeping the tabs in line with the address bar, kind of what Apple is saying the new design is going to be. Because on the iPad, you have the option of like putting the tabs underneath the address bar at the top of the screen or in line. I've been trying to use it in line, thinking like maybe that's where the design will one day go permanently. And I'm not crazy about it still. It still feels like I lose track of what tab is active and where I am in my row of tabs for sure. Tab groupings is awesome, and I've used that a couple times, and I really like that. But I do feel like the old style tabs are below the address bar, and each tab is like its own rectangle, and it's very clear which is active. It just felt like a better user interface design. I'm still using it, and I'm trying it out. I will probably turn off the tinting, because sometimes I will do the keyboard shortcut, even on my iPad, of Command Shift and then left and right square bracket, which scrolls through your tabs quickly. And if I do that quickly on the iPad with the Magic Keyboard, if that tint changes a bunch of times, like it's almost like a strobe effect, especially if I have a bunch of AppleInsider tabs open and various websites in between, it's a little jarring. So the tinting I can do without. I'd rather Safari just stay whatever color the default is as I browse different websites. Don't want that changing, but I don't know, jury's still out. I'm not sure.
It's weird for me because I've noticed a difference in opinion depending on if you're one of those people with 100 tabs open versus 3 tabs open. And I'm a person who might have 3 or less tabs open at any given moment. Even if I'm writing an article about something, I might have 4 tabs open. It's just, the thing I'm writing, the publisher where I'm publishing, and, and then I have a notes app or whatever I'm writing in open next to it. So I'm not going overly complex. When I'm done with a subject, I close the tabs out. I'm not saving them forever. If I need access to them later, they go in bookmarks. Like, that's how I'm managing my stuff. So I'm not leaving just 100 million tabs open in the top of my toolbar. It's just never something I do or prefer.
Right.
So for me, these design changes haven't been so aggravating. I like the iPhone version. I've been using it. It's hit and miss. I see what they're doing in the latest version where the whole address bar area and the bottom keys are all have their own segmented grayed out area that blends in. So that way you're not seeing content behind the address bar because that could get confusing.
Yeah.
That's fine with me. A lot of people have commented, and I agree, that the animations seem a lot more fluid in this version for the iPhone. So I think they're getting closer to finalizing that we might as well just get used to seeing this, unless you decide to revert to the old system. I've been using that one on iPhone and preferring it, and I like how the sides of the other open tabs kind of poke into the side of the address bar, and it gives you that. It's a little odd because everything's at the bottom of the phone, so the swiping gestures for changing apps and changing tabs is the same and very close together, so that collision can happen very easily. But as long as you're not paying attention, you can avoid accidentally swiping an app instead of swiping a tab. As long as the gestures I use to go back to the back swipe gesture, stuff like that all works, I'm fine with it. I will say I prefer this design just because when you are scrolling or interacting with a web page, everything disappears and all you see is the web page, and that is very nice for me.
Yeah.
On the iPad side of things, I've switched between both. The only complaint I have now of the iPad just single view version where it's all the tabs in the address bar are all in one is if you have a slide over tab open. So if I have notes open on top of Safari and that's it, where the entire UI can kind of move around. If I open an active tab on the left side of my tab list, I can no longer access the tabs on the right side of the tab list because it's being hidden by the slide over window, and I have to move the slide over window out of the way just to get to a tab, and that's annoying. I feel like if these things are animated and active, they should detect an open window on top of it and move out of the way. That's just my opinion. Maybe that'd be too chaotic. I think I'm going to stick with this system going forward. I think Apple's got something here that'll be nice once they finalize the product.
Yeah. I will say I got my iPad out, and there is the toggle there to disable the tinting of Safari depending on the website. And I do love that is an option now because I just opened a few tabs and I'm going between them with the Shift Command bracket. And it definitely feels a lot better when the Safari interface is just staying consistent and the content of the webpage. You like the tinting?
Yeah, for me personally, I like that, like the address bar and everything kind of just becomes part of the content, just because it feels more like a native app at that point. Rather than a whole on web page. So if, God forbid I have to open Facebook, rather than have Facebook be this web interface, it feels more like I'm using like a Facebook app on iPad, which is interesting. I like how they've designed that where everything kind of blends together, and I hope that they're able to enhance this. It's different from before, maybe is it Aqua or something, where everything was transparent and you could see the content scrolling by underneath because it was see-through, and like that got odd sometimes because colors would stop making sense after a while. As long as the website design goes with it, and I don't use that many websites that don't have just like a top bar with a color in it, it's fine. Now, once you start getting into stuff that's just a chaotic mess, it gets a little more complicated, but I haven't seen too much of that.
This episode is brought to you by Masterclass. With Masterclass, you can learn from the world's best minds anytime, anywhere, and at your own pace. You can learn about music composition and scoring from Hans Zimmer. You can learn about cooking from Gordon Ramsay, space and astronomy from Neil deGrasse Tyson, and one of my favorites, the art of negotiation from Chris Voss. With over 100 classes from a range of world-class instructors, that thing you've always wanted to do is closer than you think. I'm a musician, and so I do love that Hans Zimmer course. You get to see his home studio and the equipment he uses, and he talks about scoring and melodies attached to certain characters. I love it. Or if you're a freelancer, or maybe you do some work on the side, Chris Voss's class on negotiation, I highly recommend it. Chris Voss was an FBI hostage negotiator, one of the leading in the world, and he teaches communication skills, how to talk to someone in a negotiation about money or really anything. It's an excellent course. I highly recommend, and I love Masterclass because you can watch it on any device. They have apps for your iPhone, your iPad. You can watch it on the web or even your Apple TV. And there's also supplemental material that you can download. So if you do a cooking class like with Gordon Ramsay, you can download what's the equivalent of a high quality cookbook. And again, one of my favorite features is when I'm watching it on my iPhone, you can just flip it into audio only mode if you get in the car and listen to it like a podcast, like you're listening to right now. Lessons are about 10 to 15 minutes in length, so you can do one on a lunch break or you can binge an entire class. I highly recommend you check it out. You can get unlimited access to every masterclass, and as an Apple Insider listener, you get 15% off an annual membership. Just go to masterclass.com/Apple Insider. That's masterclass.com/Apple Insider for 15% off Masterclass. That link will also be in the episode description, so you could just click it. Our thanks to Masterclass for sponsoring this episode. All right, well, this other piece of news, iCloud for Windows has been updated. And if you're a Mac user and in the Apple ecosystem, you might not even know that there's an iCloud app for Windows, but it does exist. It's for users to access some of their iCloud data and things when they're using a Windows computer. And so the app has been updated. And interestingly, the app iCloud for Windows has been updated with password management to include iCloud passwords and keychain passwords that you might have on your iPhone, iPad, and Mac. You can now access those things on the Windows computer. And now we know that iCloud passwords is going to be updated with iOS 15 and macOS 15, where you can use one-time passcodes or the two-factor passcodes, whatever you want to call it. And then on the Mac, you'll also be able to access those passwords and manage them in the system preferences. And so that kind of now matching it with this iCloud app for Windows, this is still not a standalone app, which I hope in the near future, if Apple continues to make this play to be a cross-platform password management solution, that they do choose to go with a standalone app for all their devices, iPhone, iPad, Mac, even if it's Windows. And this kind of comes on the heels too of the 1Password thing that we talked about last week, but how 1Password with their version 8 is going to a totally cross-platform system, but using Electron to build those cross-platform apps on top of. We already mentioned them before, but the Accidental Tech Podcast in their most recent episode, they actually have an incredible segment talking about 1Password 8 and going to Electron, and also the challenges of even Apple's cross-platform systems like AppKit, UIKit, Swift UI, and Catalyst, which are some of those systems are to make iPhone, iPad, and Mac apps as like one thing that can be run everywhere. And it was a great discussion. I encourage you to check it out if you're really into like the developer side of the challenges of it. One of the interesting things I thought about the 1Password story is they actually said they tried Swift UI and tried to build their 1Password version 8 for iOS and macOS with the Swift UI framework, and found that they just couldn't do it. Some of their requirements or things they needed to build into the app, they just couldn't do it with Swift UI. And that's one of the reasons why they went with the Electron version to be cross-platform, which basically means you build the app once and you can run it anywhere from Windows to Linux to Mac. So I just thought that was an interesting conversation overall as we talk about password managing. And basically it comes down to, I hope, one, I'm going to keep using 1Password because I do think it just has more features across platform for teams and sharing things with family members. But I do hope that Apple continues to put effort in their password management game and comes up with a standalone password management app for their devices.
Yeah, I don't understand Apple's allergy to making standalone apps for things, because used to we even had an app for Game Center. Do you remember that? Like there was a standalone app that you couldn't delete that lived in your library that was just for Game Center, and like no one used it. There was no purpose to it. But Apple was totally fine with that. But for some reason, we can't have a simple password app. They've they're obviously know that people are using iCloud keychain to save passwords and sync them. They're accessing them on their iPhone, or else they wouldn't have broke it out into a separate section in settings. But the next step would be obviously to give us a way to manage all of this and use this as a separate app. And WWDC is come and gone, and we haven't heard of it, so probably not at all this year. iPhone, the new iPhone isn't going to come exclusively with a password app, but it's just interesting to me that Apple avoids these things. Like, again, all these other tech podcasts these last couple of weeks have been discussing there's no weather app for iPad, there's no calculator app. I think Craig Federighi, or one of those Apple executives, mentioned that the reason why we don't have these these apps on our iPad yet is because we want to do it right if we're going to do it at all. And it's like, how hard is, like, what's right for a calculator app? It doesn't add 2 + 2 correctly. Like,
right.
It's just an interesting thing for me because, again, it goes back to Apple only having 4 employees and shuffling them between projects. This month, this year, we're all in on Apple Music, all the Apple Music features you can get, but Apple TV's not going to change one iota because, they're busy on Apple Music. It's fine. Makes you wonder what kind of stuff is going on in there because, yes, you can't throw bodies at every problem. You can't solve all the production issues or whatever just by increasing your employment basis, but it does help when you have multiple projects to have multiple people working on them. Do you remember when, like, I don't know, it's been years, but there's been conversations around Apple internally about certain apps having only one person in charge of the app. Like there's one guy that works on contacts and that's his whole job is working on contacts.
Yes.
But then he gets pulled over to work on HomePod or something. And it's like, well, contacts isn't getting updated anytime soon. So odd.
Yeah, it is odd. I will say we had talked about last week that there's not an easy way to get to the passwords management on iPhone and iPad. And we did have a listener, I forget what his name was, forgive me, but he did share that you can actually use a URL scheme with like a Siri shortcut to, in one tap, access those password settings. And so I will put a link in the podcast description that jumps to that password screen. And you can use that, you can even make it an app icon so it feels like an app when you do that. But you can kind of hack around it and access your password manager a little easier if you use the built-in iCloud keychain stuff.
Yeah, I had this set up before when the password section was still buried in the settings app, and it was just a different URL scheme, and I just never learned. I don't know how people figure this out, but I never learned what the new URL scheme for the new location and settings was. I'm sure it's some simple like, oh yeah, the $sign, that's for the the base, and then the equal sign, it takes you one level deeper. It's like I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's some very simple way of figuring these things out, but anyway, this person figured it out for me, so I don't have to learn. Thank you. And
and I will put the link to a Siri shortcut already made with this URL scheme in there. So if you just want to add it to your iPhone, add a home screen icon with it, you'll be able to do that with that link in the podcast episode notes. All right, AppleCare Plus. Apple announced that you'll actually be able to, when you buy a device, sign up for just 1 year of AppleCare Plus, which is different than previously you had to do the 3 years of AppleCare Plus and pay for it right up front. Now, if you just want to do 1 year of AppleCare Plus protection, you could do that. And an example would be if you were to get a 16-inch MacBook Pro, which, let's be honest, don't do that right now because the Apple Silicon versions will be coming out soon. But if you got a 16-inch MacBook Pro, you could buy AppleCare Plus coverage for 1 year at $140, or you still have the option of buying that 3-year coverage for AppleCare Plus, and that would cost $380. So you do save a little money when you buy the 3 years up front. But if you just want to go year by year, you can do that now with Apple hardware. And some even allows you to go month to month. I know on my son's Apple Watch SE, I do a month to month AppleCare Plus almost subscription. I think because if you do that, you can kind of do it in perpetuity. I imagine eventually you would not be able to do it when the device either becomes obsolete or Apple just stops supporting it, but that would be many more years than just 1 to 3. So I thought that was an interesting change for the AppleCare Plus plans.
Steven, can I confess something exclusive to the Apple Insider podcast?
Oh, goodness. Yes, please.
Yeah, I've never purchased AppleCare for anything ever.
Do you do the iPhone upgrade plan, though?
No. I use Verizon. I've been grandfathered into whatever the first year that Verizon said, hey, pay to upgrade your iPhone every year. I did that thing, and I've just been doing that ever since. I've never bothered changing. I might even be able to get a deal shifting over to the Apple Card doohickey this fall. I'm going to look into it. But yeah, I've been on the Verizon one ever since. So
wow. That is something.
So never had the AppleCare on anything.
That is something. Well, I will say the opposite. I get AppleCare Plus on definitely my iPhone because it's with the Apple iPhone upgrade plan. I get it on my iPads because I keep those for a while. And when I edit podcasts with it, it's not in a case or anything. And so if I drop it, I just want to know it's protected. The only time I've used AppleCare Plus, though, is with one iPhone. I think it was my iPhone 10. that I dropped it and the screen cracked and I got it replaced. And then more recently with my son's Apple Watch SE. But a couple good experiences with Apple Care Plus, and it becomes very tempting going forward to get it.
Yeah.
Again, with a desktop, I probably wouldn't get it on like an iMac or something. Laptop, I don't know.
I've had to replace 2 screens in my lifetime, an iPhone 7 and an iPhone 10 out of some stupid drunken parking lot story. But
okay.
That's all, because I don't know if it was because the case was bad. I started just basically going in and out of cases by the iPhone 10, and I've been caseless on my iPhone for the last 2 generations. I won't use cases anymore. I've never had an issue. This is me coming from the military. Like, I spent, starting with Apple in 2014 to when I got out of the military in 2019, never using Apple Care Plus while walking around on these giant metal bunkers floating on water. So,
sure.
I don't know. I got lucky, I guess. But yes, of course, if I ever break like the iPhone 12 and have to go pay $500 to get the back replaced, I'm going to feel the pain. But for whatever reason, I just, maybe how I handle my devices, maybe I'm just extra anxious, extra careful, but just never had that issue before. And I'm just going to go with the law of averages here of, okay, if I never buy Apple Care and then I have to go and one thing blows up, that one time will take care of all of the Apple Care purchases I've never made. So
that is true. That is true. All right, very quickly, Netflix finally gets spatial audio for iPhone and iPad.
Is there anything on Netflix right now that, like, I haven't honestly watched anything on Netflix.
I'll be honest, I do not subscribe to Netflix anymore because I just wasn't really watching it. So, but I don't know, people might still be doing it. So there you go. You can do spatial audio with it now. This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Talent Solutions. Today, many small business owners are busier than ever. Time spent searching for and interviewing the wrong candidates for a job opening could be time better spent growing a business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs has made it easier to get the candidates worth interviewing faster. And get this, it's free. I've actually hired many people in my line of work trying to find creative people or video or graphic designers, and trying to hire from some of these other websites, it can really be frustrating. It's hard to actually get people who are qualified, who know what they're doing, who would be a good fit for the position. But LinkedIn Jobs actually has incredible candidates just waiting to apply for your job. You can create a free job post in minutes on LinkedIn Jobs to reach your network and beyond to the world's largest professional network of over 750 million people. Focus on candidates with the skills and experience you need. Use screening questions to get your role in front of only the most qualified people. Then use the simple tools on LinkedIn Jobs to quickly filter and prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates worth interviewing faster. Did you know every week, nearly 40 million job seekers visit LinkedIn? So post your job for free at linkedin.com/AppleInsider. That's linkedin.com/AppleInsider to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. That link will also be in the show notes, linkedin.com/AppleInsider. Our thanks to LinkedIn for sponsoring this episode. A Steve Jobs email was released through the Epic Games court case and all that. And this email from Steve Jobs confirms that Apple was working on an iPhone Nano back in 2010, which pretty hilarious because now we actually have the iPhone Mini, which again, I think basically would have been that kind of device. But interesting that Apple was already thinking about that just a few years after the iPhone launched way back in 2010. That's pretty cool.
Was there an iPod Mini? Am I crazy? Or is it just iPod?
Yeah, okay. There was an iPod Mini. Okay,
because Nano, Mini, Shuffle, there was like 7 different iPods. Right. Yeah, okay.
Yes, absolutely.
That memo, I've been seeing tweets about it. Like there's a lot of information coming out from like some internal Apple communications today. I haven't had a chance to look through them, but there's some interesting tidbits. Maybe it's from the Epic case or something, because if you didn't know, the Epic case had just a bunch of emails and paperwork just flooded from Apple, like people just going through them, discovering things, and you just see them pop up every now and then. And there's one conversation with an Apple employee of some kind. I'm not going to name names because I can't remember if it's an executive, but bringing us into our next conversation, they said something along the lines of, Our priorities are the inverse, which is why we are the greatest platform for distributing child porn. Oh, no. Yeah, and that is a communication via iMessage from sometime in it says here, Apple's head of fraud, some guy named Eric Friedman, said this in an internal communication. So again, like, I don't know where this came from. I'm seeing it via The Verge. So it's like, it's a real thing. It's just, wow, Apple. Like, obviously they were aware of the problem, and the CSAM detection system is years in the making, but geez, what a terrible thing to say, right?
Yeah, that's crazy. Well, speaking of CSAM, this was something a Reddit user came out with. So this guy, I'm not going to try and pronounce his name, but I'll put the link to the AppleInsider article in the show notes. But he went through iOS 14.3 and says that he found a neural hash code inside that build of the operating system, tried to reverse engineer it, seemed to have done it successfully, got a working model of the neural hash code and system in Python, and there's actually a bunch of users like testing images through it, seeing if they can trick the neural hash versus images that are similar but slightly different, and all this kind of stuff. Now, there's a bunch of details to it. We don't have to go super in-depth about it, but Apple has said that this was not going to be the thing that ships with iOS 15, and when the whole CSAM system is implemented with the whole NCMEC database and all that coming this fall, like, this is not going to be used. And so, it's interesting that he uncovered it. Interesting that Apple was testing a neural hash code even back with iOS 14.3. But I do not think listeners or users have to be worried or concerned about this at all.
It's one of those things where Apple has been developing this for years, as I said, and they're going to need to test certain systems. This algorithm is existing on its own, hidden behind a API it's named MobileNet version 3, but the person was able to determine that it was the actual algorithm using Apple's notes on how the code worked and different things. But it was obvious that this was the image hashing algorithm, but that's all it was. It was by itself. It wasn't working. So don't worry, they're not performing anything in 14.3. That code was just there, likely so internal developers could pass things through it and see what happens. Kind of stuff. There's a lot of code in iOS that's just junk sitting there waiting to be used. So that this isn't new. Apple says that this kind of code is meant to be found in the system. So like once iOS 15 launches with this CSAM detection feature, users will be able to go pull the algorithm just as this person did, reverse engineer it and test it. Apple actually intends this to be the case. It can only help if people find ways to defeat it. Obviously, Apple doesn't expect anyone to defeat it. They're pretty adamant about that. But this system in 14.3 was able to be fooled by this collision. They were able to basically create two different images that looked different that produced the same hash. And everyone's like, oh no, see, look, there you go. All someone has to do now is alter some regular pornography with these hashes, and the Apple human reviewer won't know any different because it'll still look like a naked person or whatever, and they'll pass it along to the authorities. Now everyone's getting arrested for having this illegal stuff. And it's, the usual slippery slope conversation happened. But from what I determined when I wrote this article and said as such is, well, based on the fact that this algorithm was fooled by rotation and cropping, then there was no way this was the final version, because Apple specifically called out rotation and cropping as something that its algorithm could detect. So Apple then later, of course, confirmed this, saying, no, it's not the actual algorithm. It is a version of it. It's outdated. It's been replaced. So I'm interested in seeing what these, tech sleuths, these hackers, whatever you want to call them, go in and find once Apple actually publishes this stuff, later this year. Maybe see if the collision stuff is still possible, if there's any weaknesses, because, Apple's aware they're going to get this put through the ringer. And I'm assuming they've done their own internal tests, they put their best on it, and it's likely fairly secure. But I'm ready for people to prove it. That's the case in the public eye anyway. Yeah, people were very ready to light their torches and get their pitchforks and march to Apple because of this discovery. But yeah, there's really nothing here to talk about. It's pre-version code. It's like finding a beta of a video game on the internet that hasn't come out yet and it doesn't work. It's not quite finished.
The code supposedly is on GitHub if anyone out there wants to mess around with it. But again, I'll put a link to the article in show notes, and we got all the links in there. Now, this was interesting. David Findlay on Twitter, he actually tweeted at myself and you, and he went up to a restaurant in Adirondack, New York. And as he walked up to the door, there is a sign here. I'll put this as the chapter art as you listen to the podcast, but it says, Apple Cards not accepted. and then there's like the no smoking red circle with the line through it over the Apple logo. And David said the reason was the age of their system and not being able to create a receipt with a tip area. Now, this seemed very strange to me. One, because if no one knew you were using an Apple Card, it is basically just a Mastercard, and it has a magnetic stripe and a chip. So anything that takes a normal Mastercard credit card should be able to take the Apple Card. Like it literally, I don't understand why it would have anything to do with the kind of receipt that comes out at this restaurant and a tip area or anything like that. So I thought this was very curious. And if listeners are out there, if you have seen any establishment say that they can't accept an Apple Card for some reason, I'd be curious to know. But this is the first thing I've ever seen of someplace just saying, no, we can't take it.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy to me. Obviously, their system's just 100 years old. They're using the magnetic swiping technique from 1955. You know, it's insane. There's no way, there's no reason for a modern business not to have an updated register, even if they haven't bought one in years, even if they're barely breaking even or whatever you want to say. These registers aren't in the thousands of dollars. You know, most of the time you can get a very basic one for a couple $100, or if you want to go really cheap, you can get the square readers. So I'm not sure what the excuse is on this one. Just strange, honestly.
Yeah, I thought that was really strange.
You ever encounter a place that refuses to take a specific kind of card?
Well, American Express is one of those where a lot of places will say they'll do Visa and MasterCard, but I think American Express cards, there is a higher transaction fee for a store to take Amex as opposed to the other two. So I've seen a lot of places that don't take American Express, but Visa and MasterCard are usually pretty ubiquitous. Like they take them everywhere.
Yeah, I've not encountered too many instances where people just refuse to take any kind of card. I know here in Tennessee, we're still got some businesses that are cash only, interestingly enough. There's a couple of gas stations near a lake where you can go buy like worms to go fishing. They take only cash, like that's it. And understandable. They're in the middle of nowhere. They're not going to get any internet signal for a web-based teller anyway. But just interesting to me that we still have those kind of pockets of no technology whatsoever, even 70-year-old technology like a mag stripe. You know, it's crazy to me. And to segue into another story real quick, did you see that Mastercard gave us their timeline for eliminating the mag stripe?
No, when did they say?
Yeah, this was on AppleInsider if you want to include a link.
Yeah.
It's basically they plan by 2033 to no longer have mag stripe, and that the final 12 years away.
Okay.
So it's going to take them 12 years to eliminate the mag stripe entirely.
I think California is going to be on all electric cars before the magnetic stripe goes away.
Elon Musk will have populated Mars by the time Apple Pay is accepted ubiquitously across the United States. It's crazy to me.
All right, I wanted to touch on this real quick. Someone sent me a tracking number by photo. They're sending me something. That'll be a little tease for next week. I'll talk about it next week. But they sent me a picture of the receipt they got from UPS, and it had the tracking number on it, but it wasn't straight text. It wasn't an email. It was a picture of a physical receipt. And so they sent it to me, and I got my iPad running iPadOS 15 beta and pulled up the photo in the iMessage conversation. And remembering live text is a thing on iPadOS 15, I could literally select the tracking number from the image, share it, and go right to the deliveries app with that tracking number. And it felt like magic. It was awesome. So live text working great. I will say it got all the numbers exactly right, and it's not like super clear. Like it's a little blurry, it's a little bit at an angle. So, good on live text. It did make the Z into a 2. It's a UPS tracking code, and they usually start with 1Z. Maybe live text saw a bunch of other numbers and just assumed it was a 2, but it did get the V. It knew the V was a V, but for some reason it made the Z a 2. So anyway, it still worked great. Changed that one character and was able to put it right into delivery. So that was fun. Live text, it'll be really cool when it comes out to everyone this fall.
Yeah, live text is something I've been using more and more lately. Interesting because there's a lot of places you can't select or copy text, not just like PDFs, but websites, the App Store, for example.
Right.
So if I'm writing about an app and I want to grab some specific text or maybe system requirements for this app, I can't do it without just manually typing it out. But now, like today, I was able to select a list of like 15 iPhones and just copy it out without any problem by just doing a screenshot.
Yeah.
While in the screenshot editor, didn't have to go to photos, didn't have to save it.
Right.
While in the screenshot editor, hit select text, done, deleted the screenshot. Perfect workflow.
Yeah, exactly.
It's so good. Yeah.
It's awesome. And also, I was actually trying to find a quote the other day. And when you search for a quote, you basically just get a bunch of images of quotes, like either like a Pinterest board or something like that. And with live text, you can just select the text from those things and copy and paste it like plain text if you're trying to put a quote in a note or an article or something. So live text is going to be pretty useful, I think, come this fall.
What's even more exciting about live text is what developers are going to do with it. Again, like most of this stuff is really cool, but the APIs for it are even more impressive because soon you'll be able to incorporate live text into your apps. So a recipe management app will be able to incorporate live text so you can take a photo of a page out of a recipe book and the app developer will no longer need to develop their own text recognition engine or OCR. Like it will just use Apple's API, put it straight into the app, and the user has to do nothing. Like there's a lot of really cool things that are coming out of this that's probably going to change a lot of apps and how they work. I'm excited for it.
Yeah, for sure. All right, 2 other quick things. I actually tweeted the other day asking about storage solutions for video. And I was just curious for my own use. I wanted to know what people are using, whether it was a Synology or a Pegasus or whatever. First, I tagged a couple YouTube creators just to get their thoughts, maybe if they would reply. And all of a sudden, it became one of the biggest Twitter threads I've ever been a part of, let alone started, with everyone from MKBHD to Sarah Dietschy to Sam Cole from iUpdate to Hank Green. Everyone replied with what they do as video creators with their raw footage, and it turns out a bunch of them just delete their footage as soon as they upload a video to YouTube, which shocked many in the thread, and it shocked me too, but I thought it was really curious. It was kind of a fun thread to follow along, see which creators have an elaborate storage system and save every piece of raw data and video footage, and the ones that just throw it all away immediately after it goes up on YouTube. And I'll tell you, Hank Green, he just deletes it as soon as it goes on YouTube. So I just thought that was a super interesting thread.
Yeah, that's kind of wild to me that people just delete it, but I can't say anything because I do the same thing. I've photographed in RAW for years on big Sony cameras, and as soon as I've pilfered through all the clones, saved what I wanted, edited the photo into JPEG and put it in my photo library. Once all that's done, delete, gone, bye. I don't have like a collection of SD cards. Honestly, now looking back, wish I had some more of those deployment photos and stuff that I just thought were throwaways. Like, oh, I'll never want to look at this building again. But yeah, that sucks. But again, storage was a little bit more limited back then versus now where you can just walk into a store and pick up a few terabytes for a couple $100 and like it's nothing. And now you can save every photo you've ever taken and ever will take on this one hard drive that fits in your wallet. So
right, exactly.
As far as video goes, I'm not in that space. I've often thought about being in that space, just not something I've done yet, but I can imagine it can get unwieldy very quickly, especially if you're on someone like MKBHD's level where they're filming in 4K, HDR, ProRes, all this nonsense, and they have, a 3 terabyte video file for every show that they do. But I don't know. It's definitely an interesting thought, especially now that there's a lot of stuff where you can edit on external drives. Like you can plug an SSD into an iPad and edit in LumaFusion without dragging it into the iPad memory, which is insane. Like that's just unheard of 5 years ago. So
it's awesome.
All right. So are you going to keep all your HomeKit Insider videos? Is that what's happening?
Those kind of things? No, I don't keep. But all the B-roll and stuff from like videos I've made, I do keep those. And so I don't know. After the thread, I'm thinking about it. I'm debating which I want to do. So we'll see. All right, and the last thing, just want to give a personal anecdote about AirTag. I've actually put AirTag on a lot of my kids' stuff as we kind of enter the back to school and they'll be going here and there. I put an AirTag on one of their water bottles that they use with like one of these little lanyards. And just a couple days after that, it was immediately misplaced and went somewhere. We didn't know where it was, but sure enough, we pulled up the Find My app, found the AirTag in a neighboring town, and one of the families that my kids were with in this place, we assumed they picked it up because it was in that town. No other reason it would be over there because it wasn't where they left it originally. And sure enough, they had it. And so the AirTag accurately showed us where that water bottle was. Interestingly, the family that actually had it does not have iPhones. They have all Android phones and a couple like iPad devices. So very curious how and what device actually pinged the location over there. But AirTag did work great. We were able to find where it was and knew it wasn't totally lost. So AirTag, thumbs up. Also, in our private Discord channel, for those who support the Apple Insider podcast, user CSIN, C-S-I-N, said that he uses his AirTags almost daily to find his keys. just not sure where he placed them. And so he can make the little sound, which is really nice. You can just make the AirTag make a sound so you can find it in your house or nearby, and he uses it all the time. So if you have an AirTag story, I would love to hear from you. Tweet at me at Steven Robles. Love to know your AirTag story or anything you think of the news from this week. You can hit me up there. Also, we'd greatly appreciate a 5-star rating and review in Apple Podcasts if you haven't done that. And you can support the show. If you want access to that private Discord channel, get an ad-free version of the show and early access, you can support the show on Patreon, patreon.com/AppleInsider, and directly in Apple Podcasts. You can even do a free trial there. Don't forget to check out HomeKit Insider. Andrew O'Hara and myself do that show. It comes out every Monday, talking about smart home and HomeKit devices. And the Apple Insider Daily Podcast, where you get the top Apple news headlines in just a few minutes. Thanks for tuning in this week. We'll catch you guys next time.